I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Sergeant Puma, Cat Crab Lobster, and Duck Machine. Thank you very much for the support. It is much appreciated. Humanity, written by ack1308. Long ago, we were many, but we were divided. Even as we defied the gravity well of our planet to rise into the heavens, there were those amongst us who saw themselves as being better than the ones around them. And as it began, so it went on. When the moon was colonized, it became the sole domain of the elite, and they saw that they were rulers over all they saw, and they were pleased. As the elite claimed the moon, so did the scientists take up space between the moon and the earth. Answering only to the elite, they devised many wonderful theorems and concepts, which they bade to the engineers forge into reality within their manufactories, for they held sway over all that lived upon and beneath the surface of the earth, and they saw the power that they wielded, and they were pleased. Upon the surface of the earth, the engineers dwelt in high cities composed of many mechanisms, both powerful and subtle, and they accepted the word of the elite as law, because all did. The scientists also spoke down to them, and they accepted this, for they knew they were lower than those who dwelt in the realm of pure theory. But they, in turn, spoke down to the workers, and they were pleased with the power that they held. Swarming in their untold billions in the underground arcologies, the workers toiled in the manufactories of the engineers to produce the wondrous goods designed by the scientists by the word of the elite. These goods were not for them, and they knew it. Indeed, they knew a great many things that their masters in the engineers and scientists and the elite did not know they knew. Things that they would have troubled their masters greatly to learn about. But they did not rebel, for they had seen the results of such things before, and it rarely turned out well for the rebels when the engineers held all of the technology, and the scientists held the high orbitals, and the elites spoke down from the moon. None of their masters would shy away from massacring population of one arcology or another, for in their very numbers the workers were endlessly expendable, and their lives, though frugal, were comfortable in their own way. So the workers endured and bided their time. And so it went, for what seemed like time immemorial. Each year, each generation, entrenched in divisions between the elites, the scientists, the engineers, and the countless workers deeper and deeper. None could imagine becoming any other, or indeed becoming anything else. Change came, as it necessarily had to, from the outside. The elite disapproved of any change that they did not initiate, and they very much believed in punishing those who attempted to introduce such changes without their express permission. And so, when the scientists detected exotic tribe signatures inbound from the outer solar system, they hesitated to pass on the information until they had triple-checked it and determined precisely who was to take the fall if things went badly. Such was the delay arising from the hesitant communication that by the time the elites were fully appraised of the true situation, and an entire satellite complex full of scientists detonated as punishment for not having done something about it already, the ships were already past the orbit of Mars and performing a braking maneuver. At the behest of the elites, an antenna array was rigged up to transmit their words towards the intruding vessel. "Stand fast," the elites warned them, "or face the wrath of the forces of Earth. You are in our domain now, and our will is your command. Surrender at once, and we may choose to be merciful in our punishment for this intrusion." It appeared that the invaders were capable of translating human speech, for their initial answer consisted principally of laughter. Once they had control of their faculties, the humor vanished as swiftly as the morning fog. The people of Earth, they said, were to be subsumed within the entirety of the star-spanning empire, the name of which was unpronounceable to the humans and had no direct translation. "You may call us the rulers," they said. "It is what we will be to you. Considering your technology level, you will be allowed to perform menial tasks for us until we have decided upon a better use for you." Great was the rage of the elites, and they called upon the scientists and the engineers to unleash all their fire and fury of the people of Earth upon these invaders, these would-be rulers. After quite an embarrassing silence, the scientists asked the engineers if they knew of any spaceships that had been constructed, perhaps without the knowledge of the scientists. The engineers replied that they had not done any such thing without orders from above, as the scientists well knew. It had been a wish from both the scientists and the engineers to venture farther into space than the moon, to study the greater void and the planets that orbited within it. But the elites had refused permission whenever it had come up. Not a single elite wished to risk life and limb upon such an exploration vessel, and they were never going to allow those beings below them chance to slip the leash and vanish into the dark. Indeed, this ban had extended to even theoretical research into such ships. Armed ships had been likewise forbidden, as the elites had no wish to be accidentally targeted in their shining cities upon the moon by such vessels under the commands of lessers. In voices as hard and sharp as steel blade produced in microgravity, the invaders called once again for the surrender of the peoples of Earth. Once more, secure in their arrogance that these interlopers from beyond the stars could not truly carry out the threat, the elites refused them. Bypassing the elites, the invaders called upon the scientists in their orbital habitats to surrender at once. Though some quailed, they obeyed the orders of the elites and also refused. Next, the invaders contacted the engineers in the tall-built cities on the surface of Earth. "Surrender," they were told, "and you will yet survive." But the elites and the scientists both ordered them to stand firm, and so they did. Last, the invaders tried to contact the workers in their sprawling underground arcologies, but they had no means of contact, so they did not answer. In all truth, they barely knew this was happening at all. When the invaders attacked, it was the elites who had the least chance of prevailing against the encroaching foe, but who fought the hardest. Or at least, their loyal guardsmen did. Some elites accompanied their guardsmen while most retreated into sealed bunkers. It mattered not. The guardsmen fell, as did the elites who fought. In short order, the bunkers were breached and the elites taken prisoner. Those who resisted died. In the orbital laboratory complexes, the scientists were ill-prepared for invader soldiers to bypass sealed airlocks and simply cut their way through the hull. A few scientists attempted to fight and immediately died, most reluctantly surrendered. Upon the surface, the engineers in the great cities put up perhaps the greatest resistance. Though their resolve was tested by the news from above, they still constructed barricades and repurposed machinery for the needs of war. Not a few invader soldiers perished from the initial forays, but thereafter they had squandered the element of surprise, and the invaders brought their formidable technology to bear. City by city, tower by tower, room by room, the invaders scoured the engineer domain clear of resistance, taking prisoners those that they could, and executing those who chose to fight on. When the invader soldiers breached the subterranean arcologies of the workers, there was no battle to be fought. The workers stood aside, allowing the soldiers to declare them prisoners without a struggle. They had already been taught that resistance was futile. One ruler was much the same as another, as far as they were concerned. That was what they told the invaders. What the workers did not say was that they knew that inopportune action against the overwhelming opponent was almost always ill-fated. Everything needed to be planned out, and the workers knew how to plan. In the aftermath of the war for Earth, the surviving elites and scientists were brought down to Earth, and with the engineers were placed within the arcologies with the workers. "You are all workers for us now," the invaders told them. "Your high places are now our high places. The low places are where you belong, below us." The elites that remained, this was intolerable, unused to Earth's gravity and the abundance of sickness amongst the workers. They were sickly and weak, but still they railed against the injustice of what had been done to them. Time and again, they sought to rally their subjects to rise up and strike down the invaders. The scientists, venerated from generations of living within the microgravity habitats, suffered even more keenly than the elites, yearning for freedom of orbital life once more. They took up the call for retribution against the invaders. Banished from their great cities, the engineers felt the loss deeply. More hale and hearty than either the elite or the scientist, they felt themselves most able to lead the charge. But first, they needed an army. And for this, they turned to the workers. And the workers said no. The elite stared, uncomprehending. No worker had ever denied an elite his wishes in living memory. Astonished, the scientists looked on. The workers, they expected, would be chastised at best and executed at worst. Concerned, the engineers sharpened their tone. "This is our world," they said. "Will you not fight for it, for freedom against the invaders?" "Your world, perhaps," the workers said. "It was never ours. It was taken from our great-great-grandsires and never given back. We see no difference under another oppressor." They paused then. Words not spoken were nonetheless heeded. The engineers moderated their speech. "Things may change," they suggested. "If we win, you need not be oppressed. We can speak about this." "If this is to be spoken about," the workers said, "we want a voice." "It will be done," said the engineers, not bothering to ask the elite or the scientists for what they had to say. It was enough that they had agreement of the workers. "Will you fight for our freedom now?" "No," said the workers, "but we will plan." "Plan?" asked the engineers. "Plan?" asked the scientists. "Plan?" asked the elites. "Yes," said the workers. "Plan. When fighting a superior enemy, to fail to plan will be to fail to win. Now go away. We're busy." Seeing that the workers would not join in on the fight to overthrow the invading forces and retake the Earth, the engineers and scientists and elites went away, and the workers began to lay their plans. They had long memories and stories of insurrections that had failed, and those that failed rarely survived to try a second time. Long years passed, then decades. The invaders retained their hold on Earth, drafting those of suitable temperament into work programs. These were almost exclusively workers. Submitting to authority without complaint was almost read into them by now. The invaders saw this and trusted them more than they trusted the engineers, the scientists, and the elites. Some elites and scientists had succumbed to the gravity of Earth, or to one illness or another, but most had survived. And while they accepted their lot to a greater or lesser degree, the thought of resistance was always in their minds. So they attempted to ingratiate themselves with the invaders, seeking higher positions over the common run of the workers. The invaders saw what they were attempting, and allowed them to attain what they thought were elevations of authority. But still, the highest elite was lower than the lowest invader, for that was the way things were. The engineers also sought to gain greater access to the invader technology, but the invaders did not trust them, and only allowed them the most menial of work. Only the workers did they trust, for over the decades the workers had been the most steadfast and uncomplaining. And this was good, for this was precisely what the workers had planned for. One day, Long after the invasion, a worker reported that a piece of invader technology had been destroyed in an accident. This was not the first time such a thing had happened, and it would not be the last. The report was written up, the accident given a much more cursory investigation than one would involving an engineer or a scientist, then the matter forgotten. The workers presented the device, whole and undamaged, to the engineers and scientists and elites that they considered trustworthy. These were few amongst the whole, and included none of those who had gained a higher position. "Give it to us!" demanded the elites. By now, they only kept the name from habit, as with the attitude. Humans will be humans, and the elites had married scientists, and the scientists engineers, and workers had married anyone they chose. But still, they were those that still considered themselves elite, and those who claimed the title of scientist, and so forth. These elites demanded the device now, though it is to be noted that they did not try and seize it. "What will you do with it?" asked the workers. "We will strike at our oppressors," the elite shouted. "We will take back our world." "Your world," thought the workers, but did not say it. No. They said out loud, "Do you even know what it does or how it works?" When the elite stammered at that, the workers spoke again. "We will give it to the scientists," they said. "We need to know how it works." And so the scientists took the device away to their secret laboratories in the depths of the archaeology, and they examined the device closely. Eventually, they emerged after many days and said, "We understand this thing. We know what it does and the principles by which it operates." "Give it to us," the elites demanded again. "Now that we know how it works, we can use it against the invaders." "No," said the workers, "because we have one of these things and the invaders have many. We will give it to the engineers now, and they will use the principles to build weapons for us. Many, many weapons and other devices of war, all designed for humans to use." "But we need to fight back now," shouted the elites. The workers looked at them and shrugged. "What's the hurry?" they asked. More years passed. The workers worked and planned. The elites stewed. The scientists studied the device until they knew its every inner secret, and the engineers built weapons and other devices of war to equip the teeming billions of Earth. When the day finally came, the workers spoke to the elites. "Now is your time," they said. "Lead us. Prove yourselves worthy of your title." And as the elites made speeches about how Earth would be liberated, workers and engineers swarmed from the archaeologies and overran the great cities of the engineers, catching the invaders by surprise and capturing their ships. After decades of operating the invader machines, the engineers were readily able to divine their workings. Crewing their ships, the forces of Earth first scoured the orbitals of invader vessels, then finally attacked the base upon the moon. Decades of subservience had rendered the invader garrison complacent, much as the elites had been complacent in their turn before, and it fell swiftly. Triumphant, the captured ships returned to Earth with their prisoners. The elites were elated. Here, before them, were the overlords beneath whom they had chafed. "How does it feel now?" they asked. "My people will return," was the steady reply. "You may think you have won, but when the ships darken your skies once more, you'll be wiped from the face of your planet for this." A worker stepped forward then, waving his weapon. He gestured for the invader prisoner to be taken away. "They are correct," he said. "The invaders will come back. But we have their technology, and we have time. We can build ships. We can fortify the system. And when they return, they'll face something they haven't faced up until now. The true power of Earth." "I thought they had faced it," an engineer said. "We beat them, didn't we?" The worker sneered. "We caught them by surprise. If we had told their quislings of our plans, we would have died in the archaeologies. No, we beat them as elite and scientist and engineer and worker. Working piecemeal does not express the true power of Earth. What does then? Asked the scientist. We can be more than we're born to be, said the worker. More than the labels ascribed to us. More than just an elite, or a scientist, or an engineer, or a worker. We can all be that, and more. We don't need labels. But without labels, what are we? The elites sounded distressed. And what is true power of Earth? Humanity, the worker replied. The true power of Earth lies in humanity. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope